we'd start off by winding the clock back a couple of years and introduce how Talisman Energy were among the first companies here in town to make use of this application. I tried to get Talisman to come and present, but while the staff there are very friendly, they're also very shy. So although one or two of them are amongst you, I can introduce them one-on-one, and I'll just do the presentation on their behalf. So you look at the slide deck and you go, what's going on here? It's not October 2009. That's because this is the same slide deck that was presented at the Palo Open, which is an annual event in Frankfurt where users and partners and everyone can go to Frankfurt and get together and share case stories and stuff. And this was Talisman's submission to the best use of Palo competition. So being lazy, I just sort of added that for today. So being an oil and gas town and knowing who Talisman is, we really don't have to get into a lot of details. You can look them up if you're not aware of who they are. But they're based here in Calgary, but they do have subsidiaries across the world. 2,400 employees back then, I'm not sure what it is now, producing 420,000 barrels in 2008. And some good numbers from a net income and a cash flow perspective. That's the company that we're talking about here. And because this was being presented in Germany to a bunch of accountants who probably don't have a remote understanding of the oil and gas business, we just was a slide here explaining what remediation, abandonment, and reclamation are as activities. But this was the group that adopted Palo and still continue to use it to this day. In fact, they're in the process right now of putting in their first Palo Suite application. The technology that I'm going to show you here was the predecessor, but Palo is still the core engine behind it all. Can you guys hear me all right with that next door? I can speak even louder and then they'd have a problem. So the way the group we were working with there, just to give you a sense of who they were, Jim Gordon, who being oil and gas guys and gals, you probably may even know him, he was the supervisor there at the time, and he had three guys representing him on the left side, do the actual remediation specialists, but the real workhorse in the organization was these three gals that were working for these three guys here, who did all that spreadsheet chaos kind of work. This group was responsible for an asset retirement obligation of about $250 million. So that means that at the end of the activities and the collection of oil, there's still $250 million of outstanding liability that they have to manage. It was split across about 1,300 projects, active projects back then, and it was quite a challenging kind of mix because there's actually 14 geographical areas, Turner Valley being one of them, no more because they since sold Turner Valley to Legacy, but 13 service providers, companies in town like Earthmaster and help me Kevin here, Matrix and a few others. Actually, external folks providing Talisman with the reclamation and remediation services. And so from a Taylor user perspective, there's about 30 internal folks using the system and about 70 external folks using the system. So the situation before Palo came in was an annual budget of about $40 million. The budget was something that was prepared annually. The actual expenditures were being tracked quarterly. It was very difficult to pull all the information together to compare the actuals to the plan, and because it was such a labor-intensive, burdensome process, it was only done quarterly. And it was a real manual effort. So these poor gals that were on the previous slide, in those days you had to make sure they weren't sitting beside an open window because all the stuff that was coming back, they had to manually crunch through it and consolidate the stuff. It would take many days of effort to pull the information together. Also, I mean, your retirement obligation is not something that is static. It changes very significantly at times. So when you acquire a new piece of a new asset or a new series of properties, or when you divest them, it changes the obligations quite dramatically. So it's a continually changing thing, and also it's quite complex. So at this point in time, they were only auditing about top 10% of their stuff to sort of get a rough sense of what their obligation was, as opposed to an exact sense. Okay? So back in 2007, when I saw Jim, I was actually working with Grid Dynamics at the time before joining Jedox. My timing was actually perfect because he was a little white-faced when I saw him in the cafeteria, and he was just come out of a meeting where he had to explain a $4 million overspend in the previous year that they only figured out in February. And I'm not saying that as it was just one of those things when your spend information is coming to you from so many different sources and the invoices are coming in, this is going to happen. And I think there'd be a lot of you who would probably discreetly have similar experiences. Okay? And the big challenge behind it was that the information was lagging behind 2 months. So how could he know with great accuracy? And there was no single point of truth. And there's also a very weak link between budget and expenditure, and it was informally prioritized. So when they were spending this stuff, it was one where, based on their knowledge of the business, some decisions were being made, but wouldn't it be nice if there was a formal process behind the prioritization of the spending and the adjustments made throughout the year? So that was the before state. Can any of you kind of associate with this kind of a before state and will be willing to admit it publicly? I see lots of people saying no. No. I'm certain there's a few of you. Now, when oil prices are at, what was it, 130 bucks a barrel, you know, you can make money in spite of yourself, so it's not as big of an issue. But when they plummet to where they went to for a while there at $40, $50, you know, your obligation is still there, and so all of a sudden you have a third of the associated value, etc. That became a real challenge. So I'd like you to just, if you can read this, instead of me reading it out to you, just have a quick read of this, because this is a statement on the current state in 2009. So when you see words like manual, labor-intensive, spreadsheet-based, when you then see the future state of updated automatically and daily, that sounds pretty nice, right? Okay. So let's go into a little bit of details. So in their case,